Hello, my name is Angel Santos. Now, I'm pretty sure all in all, we can say the 2000 presidential election was one of the most grueling, closest presidential elections in American history, right? We can say that, can't we? Yeah, we can say it. So, in one corner, we got Vice President Al Gore. In the other corner, we got George W. Bush. Two high-profile guys that just want to be the president of the United States. Now, the campaign for this U.S. presidential election was intense. American voters were on the edge of their seat. This is important, George W. Bush or Al Gore. Al Gore, 1 minute, he's winning. George W. Bush, 1 minute, he's winning. You just don't know what's going to go on. But there is one thing we know. The president will be decided on whoever wins Florida. Whoever wins over Florida wins the presidential election. So now, let's get on the topic onto why Florida is so important for this presidential election. It all came down to Florida's electoral votes. What are electoral votes? All states in the United States are designated as electoral votes. Why even need these electoral votes, you may ask? So, in the US, elections aren't won by the popular vote. Elections are won by these electoral votes. A highly populated state like California in 2000 would have like 45 electoral votes. On the other hand, a smaller state like Delaware is only given 3 electoral votes in the year of 2000. There's a total of 538 electoral votes. If you want to win all the electoral votes, you have to have the most. And if you really want to win the electoral votes, you have to have at least 270 or more. None of the presidential candidates actually had enough to win the election. At the time, Gore only had 255 electoral votes, and Bush only had 235 electoral votes. This is why Florida is so important. Florida has 25 electoral votes. Whoever wins Florida wins the presidential election, right? Tension's pretty high, if you would think, And now, I just want to say one word to describe this election, and that's it's just tricky. Tomfoolery. The Florida polls closed, and the results are just too close. So this is what happens, all right? A recount has to be done by machine, all right? After this recount is finished, Bush is in the lead by 900 popular votes over Al Gore. Since it was such a narrow margin, Al Gore demanded a recount by hand in 4 of the following counties: Volusia, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. So, Florida's Secretary of State decided that the deadline to have these recounts in should be by November 14th. But Al Gore didn't really seem to like this, I guess, because he wanted to have a later date. So the Florida Supreme Court decided to intervene, and they made the deadline for this recount to be at November 26th. This still wasn't enough time, apparently, because only 2 of the counties got their recounts in time. One of the counties actually gave up, and the other county was 2 hours late. But this seemed to work out, sorta, not really, because it just made the margin even closer. So Bush was still in the lead by 500. Al Gore still didn't like this. The man just didn't want to give up. So he requests the Florida Supreme Court to have an even larger recount of 70,000 ballots. 70,000 questionable ballots. Let's just say things get spicy. Once these ballots are uncovered, they found that in some of the Florida counties, votes are casted by hole punching. And this leads to human error. Human error leads to the hole punching being improper. Improper casted votes led to machines discarding a whole bunch of votes. Imagine that. And Al Gore just didn't want to ignore this. But now, it was 19 days past election day. Still, no winner to be seen. So, the US Supreme Court, I guess, has had enough because they started to intervene. This is what they have to say. A 5-4 vote in the Supreme Court decided that this recount must be stopped. But why? So, the US Supreme Court said that this recount violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment in the Constitution, which makes this recount unconstitutional. So they throw it over to the Florida Supreme Court, who really just can't do anything at this point, so they dismiss the case, which results in Al Gore conceding from the election. This basically awards all the electoral votes to George W. Bush, which, as you can probably guess, George W. Bush wins the 2000 election. This decision that was made in this election really influences the Supreme Court's decision making today, because the problem with the Equal Protection Clause in the election process generally presents many complexities. Nowadays, many courts actually invoke this case, and many briefs actually cite this case as well. This court case introduced a very important idea that the political process has rules, and these rules need to be prominent and obvious.